Welcome, everyone, to the Leaders Lounge podcast. My name is Karen Neckelman, and today we are with Jackie Levine. She is Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum, Instruction, and Human Resources at Putnam Valley, CSD, New York. Hi, Jackie, how are you?
Hello, Karen. How are you? It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So, before we start, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. I am the Assistant Superintendent for Putnam Valley Central School District. My title is officially Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Instruction, and Personnel. So I oversee human resources as well as the Curriculum and Instruction Department. I've been here for about 6 years, started as the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and oversaw human resources in certain capacities until officially receiving that title last year. So while I'm fairly new to the title of human resources, I've been doing it for some time here in Putnam Valley. And then prior to that, I was the coordinator of school leadership and marketing services for Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, where I coordinated and facilitated workshops for leadership for our region, which is pretty much the lower Hudson Valley of New York.
Okay, thank you. So today we are going to talk about school leadership during a life-changing illness. So, can you tell us about your journey from living with chronic kidney disease since childhood to receiving a kidney transplant from your husband and how you continued leading through that experience?
Yeah. So yes, I was diagnosed with something called MPGN. And that was a kidney condition that was idiopathic and really a result of my immune system attacking and scarring my kidney. And I was diagnosed with that at about 10 years old. So I've really grown up with the disease and just kind of carried it. It was pretty much dormant, what they would call it, for most of my life. It would occasionally pop up in, some kind of issue. One time I was hospitalized with pneumonia, and it was a complication of a medication I was taking for the kidney condition. But in general, it's always been something that really hadn't had a big effect on me as an adult or as a leader until recently. Sometime around 2020, 2021, my numbers began to rise in one aspect and decrease in another, which in those two areas, creatinine and and GFR, um, that indicated severe kidney stress and brought me from stage 2, 3, where I was for most of my life, to end stage kidney failure. And that was over the last 2 years. And my doctor had a serious conversation with me about dialysis versus transplant. I was really afraid to do a transplant, but more afraid I wouldn't be able to find somebody. And we found out, even though I'd been married to him for at that time about 17, 18 years, we found out that my husband was a match. So I know, very romantic.
Yeah, that's
So
incredible.
my husband, because I am a, universal recipient, he's a universal donor. So
Mhm.
it just worked that we were able to be a match. And lo and behold, 2 years later, March 25th, we had our transplant procedure. That was a little over 3 months ago now, and we are both in full recovery, doing well. I'm doing particularly well. We find out more about him in a couple of months. They usually wait to test the donors. But he's my hero and he's my match in more ways than one. And I'm so grateful.
Yeah,
So
that's amazing. So, as a school HR executive, you're usually the person helping others through crisis. What was it like when you became the one who needed the support?
it was hard. One, it was hard to admit needing the support. The funny thing about kidney disease is it declines slowly until it declines really fast. But my norm was not what others' norm is. So I thought I was fine. I felt fine. I was going about my life doing my Pilates classes and working all the hours that a school leader works and, going to board meetings, presenting, never felt traveling, never felt like I was ill. And then in the last few months, as things worsened, I was slower. I was struggling, but I needed to keep it together. I knew the transplant was coming. I was prepared to really be, better in the long run, but I had to make it through, I would say, December to March. And it was hard. My medications were changing. I had to manage how to take certain medications, what foods I should and shouldn't eat because of the way they were impacting my kidney and my blood levels. Things were worsening. So it was really hard to one, admit that I needed help and say it out loud. I'd never talked about this condition my whole life. I'd never worn it as an identity ever. So to suddenly start telling people, yeah, I'm kind of sick. I'm actually really sick and I'm going to have this transplant. That was tough for me. And then to then also make sure I took the time I needed to one, step away from stressful situations. I needed to keep my body as calm as possible. I really needed to, remind people of what I was going through when they needed something and they felt their something was the priority. But that was even hard to do, because everyone has their priorities and their needs. And as a leader, we're taught and want to serve folks and we want to do the best we can for others.
Mhm.
But sometimes our best isn't there and we have to give ourselves grace for that. So that was a big learning curve for me.
Mhm. And what did you learn about trust, delegation, and building a team that can thrive when the leader is temporarily unable to do everything?
Well, I learned that one, you have to set people up for success, right? I was going out on a leave. I was going to be out of school for at least 30 days. I knew I'd be available by email and phone, but I didn't know to what extent. I didn't know how long I'd be in the hospital for. There were a lot of unknowns. So before going out on leave, I put a lot of systems and practices in place so that others could fill in for me in my absence. I also made sure that anything I needed to do for the district was tied up. But there were pieces that I needed to trust other people to do. I needed to trust a certain individual who's a teacher leader for our district. I needed to trust that he was going to lead those meetings and plan those agendas with understanding how I would do things after modeling for the full year for him, how I do things, how I, maintain contact with people. I needed to trust a lot in my partner, my superintendent, who is just a wonderful human and a great partner in this entire leadership journey and life journey we're in together. But I needed to trust and rely on him a lot that I could step away and he would see to it that everything that needed to be done. And he even insisted on this, to be quite honest. Every leader needs that. You need someone, especially if you're not the superintendent or the board member, you need those people to be supportive of you and to be able to trust that they're okay with you not being okay and that they want you to get better. It's more important to them sometimes than to yourself. You're trying to do all the same things you would normally do. So, having people like him remind me that I needed to just take a step back and trust in him that he would make sure everything got done that needed to be. That was important.
Mhm. So, how has experiencing serious illness firsthand changed the way you approach employee leave, accommodations, wellness, and supporting staff through difficult life events?
Yeah, that's such a great question. It definitely gave me perspective I didn't have before, for everything from maternity leaves to sick family leaves to just general, illnesses people were carrying and bearing themselves. I understood even more intimately what they must be going through. I understood the challenges in our healthcare industry of getting approvals, getting letters, getting blood work done, getting, the approvals to come back to work. I understand how complex and how delayed some of those things could be better than I did before. So it allowed for, I would say, greater empathy for the person going through those things and a different understanding now of even something like maternity leave. I had never had a child before, but all of a sudden I had this cesarean type great abdominal surgery done on myself. And I understood the challenges of getting up off the bed and maneuvering and how your core was not as strong as it could be and what that meant for maybe that expectant mother who is going on maternity leave after a cesarean, why she needs 8 weeks. There was a lot to that I hadn't fully understood before, even if we complied with the laws and everything required. Now I have a different level of understanding for that. So
So, and what advice would you give to leaders who are facing a major health challenge but feel pressure to continue performing at a high level?
Well, I think it's really true. The cliche we all hear now that you have to put on your oxygen mask first, but you really do. Because if you can't function well, you actually can hurt the organization. So if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not taking care of your body, your mind, your wellness, the organization will suffer. And I think that helps maybe for leaders to put that into perspective. You know, it's one thing to say we need to take care of ourselves first, but it's really another to say you could harm the organization if you're not at your best. You could end up making your situation worse and taking you out of the office for longer. You could end up not realizing the effects a certain medication is having on you or your cognitive abilities. And then you're not necessarily aware of the mistakes you could be making, especially with someone who maybe works with a lot of data or numbers. So that would be some of the advice I would give first and foremost is take care of yourself. The second piece of advice would be to really rely on your team and build that culture early. Build a strong team early so that when something like this happens to one of you or multiples of you, it really could, the show will go on in your absence. So you have to build that structure, build that trust, build those relationships.
Mhm. So, and to finish our conversation, Jackie, looking back, what do you hope your experience teaches other educational leaders about leading with empathy, vulnerability, and humanity?
I hope my experience leads people, other leaders, to be more communicative in this area. I think there's a lot of pressure to always present a strong front, to always make sure everyone knows you're okay and that, you know, you're rock solid, nothing bad will happen because you're always there. I think setting the stage when you have something you're going through and doing it well, doing it appropriately and professionally, but well, is important. For example, when I was about to go out on leave, I knew I had to give this information to all of my teachers. I knew they needed to know. I wasn't going to let our staff, and I should say all staff, because really everyone was at the meeting. I went to each building. We have a elementary, a middle, and a high. And I went to each building at their faculty meeting and I presented to them. I had three things to tell them. And one of those things was that I was going out on leave and I knew this would be a big shock. I knew no one knew I was sick and it was going to be a tough conversation to have and how to give a certain amount of information without giving too much information because that wasn't necessary. But I knew I needed to also tell them three things. This is a good thing because a transplant is a good thing, right? Even though I was scared of it, I knew it was a good thing in the long run. Um, there's nothing they needed to do right now, which applied to all three things I had to tell them, but mostly my own thing. They didn't need to do anything about it. And we're going to be okay because it was going to be okay. I was going to go through my procedure. I was going to recover. I was going to come back and we were going to go forward. Everything normal as usual, right? So I really needed to set the stage before I told them that information. So I hope educational leaders that hear this and hear us talking about this, one, don't feel alone. Know that many people go through traumatic personal issues, whether it's grief, whether it's a medical issue. Don't be silent about it. It doesn't help anyone. Make sure at least those closest around you know what's going on so that they understand a little bit about why you seem a little vacant or absent or missing in action sometimes. And then really prepare how to tell others, how to tell your school community so that everyone can feel reassured that the show will go on. So
Well, Jackie, I want to thank you for joining us. We
thank
are so glad everything went well for you, and we
thank
hope to have you back soon.
thank you so much, Karen. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.